I spent much of yesterday thinking of Darius the Great. The great deceiver, really. What's the most likely explanation for his rise to greatness? Well, he was of a branch of the royal line and the eldest son of it. But nothing had happened for 3 generations. You've got to go back before you get to being king. And 3 generations is, well, the first is 50%. You know, the king was my dad. The second is one of my granddads was. In the world where there's male dominance, you understand. So there's a 1 in 4. The next one back is 1 in 8. And then we get back to the king, and he's 1 in 16th of who I am. But in that time, especially with the affluent, and kings, of course, originally, they had many children. So if you think, I'm not sure if it's Cyrus or Darius that has 16 children, but let's say 10, it's an easy number to handle, just to give an idea, that a prosperous person could have easily 10 children. Some illegitimate as you think, but then what's the difference when you had N wives? 4, 5, 6 wives. Or mistresses, what have you. So 1 step back is you're 1 of 10. It helps being the eldest, of course. And then 2 steps back, you're 1 of 100. 3 steps back, you're 1 of 1,000. Then you get to being who you are. If you like going back, you get back to the king, one who was king. If you think of going forward, you get to yourself. You're 1 of 10,000. That's not automatic legitimacy to the throne, is it? Especially as there are others with a much stronger line, like their dad was king. And they're the eldest surviving, given you've knocked off the others, perhaps. Perhaps, not necessarily. Well, they may have died in battle, like, yeah. The most likely explanation for Darius's rise to glory, he could show he was the eldest son of a line, big help, but very dormant for 3 or 4 generations. Oh, well, that's, only 3 if he's now become king, 4 if he hasn't. Still dormant. And the king dies. If the brother is removed, I'm arguably the more acceptable in line to be king. I may hold the brother in contempt. Perhaps I return from a battle with my co-generals, and we have much to gain by me seizing the throne. The king knows this. and you are the military head, in effect, given what you can do for your general colleagues, 5 or 6 of them. Before you manage to return, the king flees. After all, you are his army. You are his right-hand power. We round up everyone that would have supported him and have them executed. This establishes some dominance. After all, some of those we've executed are unquestionably of the king's branch of the family, and the others in fear wish to show allegiance to your branch. It's justified on a story that says the king wasn't the king, it was an imposter who looked like him. Really? And this of Darius, who we find believes in deception rather than force, where such is effective, far more economical and much easier to achieve. So they claim they killed the imposter. It was a fake, of course. That's the story. And who is willing not to believe the story, given the power of the returning establishing king? But he was an impostor that simply looked like the king, and the real king had been killed. But of course the real king has not been killed and has fled for his life, and could be anywhere in some remote part of the kingdom, disguised as a holy man, a wandering mendicant. Who knows who he is? Well, who he is what was the king's brother, and still is, ex-king. And what was the spiritual religious drift of the time? Well, if he flees to China, he's Lao Tzu, Taoism. If he from there comes back to to Persia, then comes to India in particular, under the Persian Empire, then he's Buddhism, the personification, as he makes it, of the drift. Hindu religion in that direction. Gautama Buddha is a title and name that is very reminiscent of the deposed kings. It's the simplest expectation story from the data we have in history. And the more likely, I think, than anything said by the deposing monarch, and the explanation that others come to, given his grip on the historicity of the matter. To have the greatest monarch as the most able deceiver, who prides himself on such, is quite simply, fundamentally, anything but the ideal from a godly point of view. It is the epitome of the lie ascended to high places. Quite simply, power, the opportunity of such, is what imperfection gravitates to. The kingdom of heaven is not of this, and this is not great in the kingdom of heaven. It is to be kept far off until it is otherwise. By the grace and will of God, the love of God, that trains children into perfect heavenly adult life. Wonderful Dad. Heavenly Dad. Thank you, Dad. But outside of heaven, so to speak, in the school, in the classroom, the evil trains itself. The lie can be used against lies. And stories can teach much. So a historicity that has a deposed king as the prince that was brought up in a palace, but escaped the palace, not pushed out, you'll notice, into the city and saw the reality of life and suffering, who became in consequence a wanderer, a mendicant, a holy man, a great teacher of the understanding of suffering and its removal, whether Lao Tzu or Gautama Buddha, is a historicity, a story that has great meaning to all who suffer, gives hope, gives teaching, becomes a blessing to his true people. And his neighbours. Producing not one but two great world religions. Wow. So God has him in the story changed from glory, being king, to glory. Enlightenment. A great blessing to his people, and one who has truly suffered much. in the historicity at least. I tell you, never underestimate the power and the potential blessing and teaching that can be in a story. Thank you, Dad. I'm compelled to say I see Jesus. Thank you, Dad. Right, quick review. Got the order wrong. Seems to have gone to India first, which was still on dangerously close territory to the new king, I suppose. Not too dangerous until you're found out. Was it 9 attempts on his life? As Giorgiani points out, unlikely for the average simple ascetic. Something special about this ascetic. And flees from India to China, which is a bit further beyond the reach. Perhaps. Look, it's all conjecture. And though in some ways fascinating, hardly relevant to how you live your life and relationship with God, is it? The religions of the world are what they are. I mean, regardless of the convoluted history that may or may not be the cause of such. Matters from this historicity is how it affects your values and who you are if you've entertained any particular historic story. Any story. A basic common foundation of this one is that there's good and evil in the world, and religions as they surface and seem to be are too a consequence of some contrast and clash between good and evil, whether understood or not. And in what presentation or other is to be received. That's not really the point. What is the point is that we seek reliability, understanding, knowledge. We are uncertain as to whether we have such at any time on any issue. It seems, from our experience, and that this could be a blessing, could, conceivably, in that it propels us into the arms of God. We seek certainty, perhaps. We seek assurance. We seek what is the goodness, regardless of what is or may be. We orientate our whole being to God, our God. And our view of the kingdom of heaven. Until our life adjusts such by the grace of God, His goodness and His love and kindness, that we may see more clearly or more profitably as regards an eternal quest for the goodness of God. To love you, Dad, our Dad. All our heart, soul, mind and strength, joy, peace, happiness, goodness, wisdom and understanding. You know the list. You can fill it in yourself easily. Thank you, Father. Love you, Dad. Thank you, Dad.